Hey guys, this is Commodore Sam coming to you again from Lower Alabama. What I've got today is something a little bit different. We're going to go to onto my messy workbench here, and we're going to dig into some hardware. What I've got here that I'll show you in just a moment is one of my normal Commodore 64 boards. It's got a little bit of a different case that I got from aftermarket case. But as far as the board inside, it's pretty original. But what I want to do today is I've got a package from it's the SPL HD-64 modulator replacement. And so what this does is this gives us HDMI on this 64. And so we're going to take out the modulator, put in a new one, and see what the difference looks like. So let's get started. What we're going to do is we're going to stick this inside, like I said. But what I wanted to show you first was, and maybe I can get a good video of this, and I don't know if you can see it or not, if it comes clear on the video. But this is the standard video coming out of it that's going, of course, to a good, it's a little beat up, but the pretty good monitor as far as Commodore displays go. But you can see from this board that there's a little bit of gel barring. At least I hope you can see that. It's not a bad screen. I've seen a whole lot worse, but I want to be able to put this on an HDMI screen. And so we've got a couple of HDMI screens that we're going to try. I've got this little low budget one here that is actually a prison style monitor and a TV that we're going to try it on. And then we're going to we can try it on a couple of other displays. I may try it on my big TV up here and just see what it looks like there as well when we're done. But we will compare what the HDMI looks like compared to what this looks like. But also, this is supposed to continue to work through the traditional DIN port for video. So we'll see what this video looks like through the DIN port once we've replaced the modulator. So stay tuned. Hi, this is Robin. No, really, this is Commodore Sam back to you. I had to do that. He's always showing this angle. Of course, there's a couple others that do it as well, but it's a good angle. Anyway, so what I'm going to do, what we're going to do again is we're going to take this apart. I honestly don't even remember what board is in this particular computer. I have a few, and I swapped boards so many times doing different mods and changes. I can't remember specifically what was in here. So we're going to open it up, and I solely chose this one because one, it still had the traditional video port on it, the traditional RF modulator, I meant to say, and it had a little bit of gel barring like I showed you before, and so some of my others are a little bit better in quality, so I'm hoping to improve the quality on this one. So let's open it up and see what's in here, okay? All right. Okay, so looks like we got a 466 in here. Obviously, it doesn't have everything original inside. Got some a little bit different screws. Got these hex screws, but they just happen to be the same size as the star. I forget what you call the star style head, but these hex heads fit perfectly. Okay, so we take this out. Yeah, so this is a 466 board, which is not a bad board. This actually is one of my favorite boards. Wasn't sure if that's what was in here. What I like about it is, about this particular board, this 466, that it has this yellowish color, is they're just really resilient. You can work on them very well, replace replace some socket chips and stuff like that on them, and it really holds up really well. It's a well-made PCB, in my opinion. So we'll have to pop this out, and then we'll remove this, and then of course our board is going to go on it. So let's look at the board here. I've already opened this up, and so inside here we have an HD-64 SPL, and it has this little cable here that runs from a little band cable that runs from the VIC chip, and it runs over to the modulator, which will sit in the place of this. And so we're going to take this here, and it will go right there where that goes. Okay, and then, like I said, this right here will fit. Let's see. Cut this. Has some tape on it. My understanding is, and we're going to read the instructions and make sure we do it right. Okay, but we've got this socket here, and this ribbon cable, and it'll fit here, and it'll go over to there. And then we have these other two little wires here that come over and solder onto what I believe is the timing circuit over here on the cartridge port. A lot of different things hook over to the cartridge port to get timing. So anyway, we got some headers to put on the board, but also some to the receptacle, or the female version of the header, going down here on the board as well. And we have some standoffs that are going to hold it up high enough for it to come through the port where the RF comes out right now. So that's kind of what we're going to do. And time to get the soldering iron out and remove the deal here. So let me put this back in here and get these out of the way, and we'll get right to that. All right, so let's look and see what we got to do. So this one's still got its board on. I'm sure it may not be soldered on. I think I've been in this one before. Looks like it's not soldered. Just got it kind of bent over on it. A lot of times, sometimes I remove those. This one, I guess, was in such good condition I didn't bother. They're not totally unuseful, I guess you would say. They do protect the bottom of the board a little bit in case something gets up in the louvers in the bottom of the case. You got these louvers down here, and so things could get in there if you're in certain environments, and so it does protect against shorting out the board on the underside. But a lot of times I take them off and discard them, as a lot of other people do as well. But I did not in this case. All right, so we are taking that off, and we'll set it over here to the side as well. So to remove this RF modulator, basically you got these tabs that hold the can to the board here. They'll have to be bent, and it doesn't look like they're soldered at all. Sometimes they're soldered. Anyway, so I'll have to bend those to remove the can. And then you've got these 4 pins here and these 4 pins here that will definitely, and I think maybe that one solder point there and there, that will have to be unsoldered to get this. just going to straighten these little tabs here. Oh, that's not, don't want to mess with that one. That's the guard. Okay. Okay. Now let's see if we can get some of this desoldered here. Okay, so now, we've got this RF modulator out, and so we'll stick the other one in. So as I was saying before, this board will sit right there, and again, the parts that we have over here, we'll hold it off and at the right angle so that it will work just great. So let's pull out the instructions here. It says, before installation, the original RF modulator must be removed, and any residual solder needs to be removed from the RF modulator header pads on the motherboard, which we did. Always examine the interleaver thoroughly. Any pin that receives a trace should be soldered. Also, verify that there are no solder bridges between any adjacent pins. Only relevant for the soldered version of the interleaver. The press bit version has no solder points. So this is the long board, and you'll notice on the bottom here that you've got different sets of pins for the short board and for the long board. A 466, of course, is the long board. Really, there's only the 469, to my knowledge, that is the short board. And so this was the long board revision right before the 469. And again, one of my favorite boards, because it's reduced some of the chips, but still has the main chips being separate. When installing on a longboard, use this empty header to grab 5 bolts and ground from the expansion port. So we're actually getting 5 bolts and ground is not timing. The expansion port pin closest to the HD-64 is the ground, so that would be this one over here. And the next one to it is the 5 volts. So these last two. So if you look at the instructions here in this picture here, you'll notice that it's soldered onto the pin 1 and 2 of the cartridge port here, and that is pin 1 and pin 2 right here at the on the cartridge port. Okay, so now it looks like on the bottom here we've got to go ahead and get these. We got to get everything to our header and standoffs and all that on here. All right, so first of all, let's go ahead and empty everything out of here. So we'll have everything. Set that to the side. I don't think I'll need the solder braid anymore, so let me put that up. Okay, so we're going to take the 5 bolts and put it in here. And I'm going to move this out of the way temporarily while I get this done. And make sure, let's turn my soldering iron down a hair. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to use a slightly different soldering, a slightly messy, less messy soldering paste here for this part. And I'm going to use this wire to actually put a little bit on the pad. You can, people will say you can't use too much of this. I don't know that that is true, but okay. I'm going to get a little bit of solder on my tip here, and I'm going to set it right here on this, and there we go. That's what solder flux will do for you. Makes that a whole lot easier job. Okay, and then I'm going to take the 5-volt, again, put a little bit on here, stick it through the hole, and on the underside I'm putting my finger well down the wire so that it doesn't burn my finger when I put this on here. All right, and so now I've got those 2 pins soldered on there well, and so we'll do a little bit of cleanup there on that, just a hair. I'm using, by the way, an anti-static brush so that we don't have any issues. Okay. Just going to damp this a little bit just to clean up any further residue. Okay. All right. Now we got to put these header pins in here. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to carefully set this down on those pins, and we're going to put a little bit of solder paste on there, and I'm going to use a just the back end of a wooden Q-tip to kind of rub that on there. This is just the way I like to do it. I'll get a generous amount on my Q-tip here, and I'll just rub it across the pins here. Again, this is pretty easy soldering, so you don't need a whole lot, but even with easy soldering, solder paste makes a huge difference. Okay, I'll need some more of this later, so I'll set this over to the side, and we're gonna get these soldered here. I got too many cords going. You know, again, I'm sure somebody will make a comment about my soldering, but you know, I do it the way that I am comfortable doing it, with not having to get too many hands out and everything. You can obviously get the headers a little crooked here if you don't watch it, and you might have to straighten them up. But I find if you do it right, then it's pretty good, and I think it's close enough, right? Okay, so we've got our pins soldered on there. We've got some nice, good solder joints. We've got our 2 wires soldered on. We've got a little bit of paste under there I need to wipe off. keep it a little bit clean, do a little bit of a professional job. Okay. Again, these are going to go over to our pins on there. All right, so now let's get, we'll need to get, I'll go ahead and put these on while we're at it. The instructions say to put a little bit of super glue. I read the instructions before we started, right? Which you should do, correct? But anyway, it said to put a little bit of super glue on the underside of this standoff to secure it to the board. I don't know that I really want to do that. I may do that, not ruling it out, but I'm not sure that's what I want to do. I mean, now granted, you can get solvent that will remove the super glue, but that seems like a drastic step. However, you don't have any solder pins like you do on, so I've used the S-Video replacements that, what's the guy in Australia? I can't think of his name right now. I need to do a comparison when I'm done between all the different videos, but our video method RF modulators. But I have a couple of his in my other Commodore 64s, and again, it's the S-Video modulator, and his are very nice. I do use a lot of PVMs in my setups, and so S-Video is very good for most of what I do. However, there are times when, like this, that where you want to be able to run your 64 on an HDMI monitor, and so it's handy to have that option here. And again, it's an option. We don't have to run it that way all the time. Okay, so we're going to, we've got this here ready to install. So what we want to do now, though, is go back to our board. And so in our board here, we need to take these headers and put them into the pins here. And so I don't have any blue tack, so what I'm going to do is, shouldn't put up the solder. I'm going to do similarly to what I did before on the other, but I'm going to hold it. And again, I'm not, it's no big deal holding it because I'm holding on to the plastic on the other side, so I'm not burning my finger or anything like that. Okay, so we've got that soldered on there, and so now this here fits, these pins here fit into those, and so we just slide them down. Now again, it was talking about super gluing these standoffs. I guess this side here might be good. I think it would have been good to have like a little clamp that went on this, that you would, to hold it in place. I think so. Anyway, let's pause there. I'm going to get this right here soldered and come right back to you. Okay, I've got this installed, and like I was saying before, the the instructions say to possibly put a couple little drops of super glue up under there and glue this to the board. I may do that since it's back here on the back side, but I think a better solution would have been to have put had a little clip or something right here. Certainly don't want to drill through the board or anything like that. But before I glue it, I want to kind of stick it into and before I finish soldering the two wires on, I just want to see what it looks like when you put it in. So if we put it in there, make sure it's good. Yeah. And so if it was sitting there where it should be, that's pretty nice. Pretty nice. A little micro HDMI there. I think that's micro and not mini. I can't remember the difference between the two. All right, so let's get this soldered onto here. Probably can just leave it in the case here. Not going to hurt anything. This black wire needs to be soldered onto this first pin here, and then the red one next to it according to our instructions. So if we get our instructions back out, it says on the longboard, the ground from the expansion port pin closest to the HD is the ground. Okay, so that means the first one here, and so we will solder this on to that point right there. Okay, so I think we're done with the soldering part, right? And so that was tedious, and of course I'm gonna probably have cut out a lot of it, so you probably are not seeing 100% of all the work that I did, but I'm not trying to show you my sorry soldering skills. What we're trying to do is do a comparison on this video. Okay, and so our next step is we got to pull this chip here and move it to pull this chip here and move it, put the interleaver or whatever it is that they call it in here. They call it a HD-64 VIC2 interleaver. That's what this is. This is an HD-64 VIC2 interleaver. All right, and I guess I don't know if they include this extra socket for in case you did not have a socketed VIC. Let's see what they recommend on installing that part of it. Let's see. Installing the VIC2 interleaver. Okay. Ensure that the computer is powered off. Duh. Okay. Remove the VIC2 from the motherboard. Not doing that. Install the VIC2 interleaver socket with the notch towards the flex cable. This is not necessary to push the VIC2 all the way in. It is not necessary to push the VIC2 all the way into the interleaver socket in this step. Place the interleaver socket with the VIC2 installed on top in the VIC2 socket of the motherboard and press until both the interleaver is well seated and the motherboard in the motherboard socket and the VIC2 is well seated in the interleaver socket. If the motherboard socket rejects the interleaver, place additional flat pin sacrificial socket. So that's what it's for, just in case it doesn't like the big round pins. Some people do that anyway, so that if the pins are not machined well, and these look pretty well, but if they're when they're rounder and too big, then of course they will stretch out your socket. It says on here in the instructions that on this ribbon cable here, that any pin that has a trace, it should be soldered on this interleaver. I do not see that being the case, so I guess I have to solder them. because otherwise, I mean, they're stuck on there. And you have this extra one. I'm assuming it looks identical. I'm assuming this extra one is in case you break it. It's an extra. Okay, so got to get out the soldering iron again and hopefully do not damage the ribbon cable. Yeah, I certainly would have liked that to have been soldered. Anyway, I have each one of these pins soldered. You can see I've melted slightly, not bad, slightly some of the plastic around at the pins on the back side. This would be one of the first times I've ever soldered on the pin side of a socket. But anyway, hopefully it was turned the right way. It says this side up, so we're going to hope we are right. Okay, and so now this pin, this goes here like this, and then I guess this fits into there. And looks like it only has pins on one side, so I guess if you get it upside down, you're which you shouldn't. Okay, all right, so let's with these heat sinks on here, I'm not going to use my normal chip puller. I would normally be very careful pulling this chip out. I'm just going to kind of ease it out. Luckily, the can's not around it, so we don't have an issue with that. I suspect if you had a can around it, it would be maybe a little harder. Of course, sometimes you can use the can to pry with to give you a lever point. You can't always do that this way. I usually do the twist the screwdriver method. Okay, because what you don't want to do is exactly what happened there. These cheap sockets that Commodore used sometimes will pull out the pin when you pull the socket out, and you actually have to put them back in, which is what I'm having to do here. And I don't like having to do that at all. Straightening pins in a socket is never a good thing. Okay, so we have that in there, and the notch is over here on this side here on this particular board, and so we're gonna press that in and see if we can get our VIC chip in. And we did. Okay, I think we are fully in the socket. It seems to be retaining the retaining the deal. We didn't get too much, and we're going to feed this into the receptacle here, and I've got paste all over my fingers. Okay, and we're going to get these stuck in the socket. Get the ribbon cable in there. Okay, and it's in. Okay. All right. Let's see if we can bend this capacitor down, and don't know of a good way to, I guess That's fine with that ribbon cable flopping like that. I don't know that I like that. Need to, obviously don't want to bend it too badly. Okay guys, we are getting close. I'm going to save this ribbon cable in case I ever have to do that again. Obviously it's just a socket with this, the interleaver is just a socket with this ribbon cable on it. So you do have a replacement there if you really mess it up. So it was nice of them to include a replacement. Okay, so I've got a micro HDMI cable here plugged up. It is micro because it's labeled on my cable that actually fits. So it's definitely micro, not mini. And so you can see the installation there. And you know, I'm not plugged up there, and I've got this TV here. And so I'm going to turn it on. You'll notice that some lights light up there, and we get a Commodore screen there. So far so good. And the picture looks really great. Very happy with that picture. I have to see how it looks on some games or some programs, but certainly the Commodore basic screen looks pretty good. All right, I'm gonna turn it off. I'm gonna also, we need to check and see if we can get a signal over here on the monitor over here. So let's turn her off and unplug the HDMI cable, and we'll plug in the DIN cable and turn her on and see what happens. Okay, that's black and white. Is that a PAL signal? Or do we have color not showing up? Which is it? My understanding is there is a configuration for all of this, so we'll have to dig into that and see what we get. Well, I'm gonna put all this together, and I may put a couple of drops of super glue on the back side there to make that steady. I don't know, but I guess I should make sure that it's going to give me a color screen up there first. Sorry if I'm shaking the camera a little bit. Anyway, we will be back as soon as I do some more determining. So I did miss a step. In the analog video jumpers section, it talks about the fact that we have to well, there's two different parts. There's the audio jumper that tells it what to do, and there's the video jumper that tells it what to do. On the video jumper, it says the jumper denominated SV:0-S in figure 4 determines whether the amplitude of the chroma signal is on the S-video analog output matches that of an original RF modulator, or if it should be the lower standard compliant amplitude. No chroma is available on S-video analog output until one side of the jumper or the other has been closed. So we didn't close anything here on this jumper, so therefore on the deal up here we are not going to see color. So basically, if you flip over here, this is the instructions, and so basically if we want it to be original, we've got to solder these two jumpers together here. So that is what I am about to do. I'm not going to video it though. Okay guys, you will notice that I now have the jumper here bridged on the left side, and that should set it to original intensity on the chroma, like a regular modulator. And so I believe that's the setting that I want. Again, so we're good. I'm going to turn the computer on here, and we now have color. Guys, now I've got one more thing to show you in here before I close this up and actually put it through some more paces. So what I've done now is I have closed the audio jumper. Now the audio jumper, apparently until you solder one side or the other of this, the right channel in the audio would not have anything on it. In other words, it would be, of course, analog, which is what the it would be non-stereo, which is what, you know, the 64 normally outputs. I've chosen to leave it internal here. I'm not going to provide it an external source for the right side. You could do that if you had a dual SID, you know, a lot of other things. But anyway, I chose to make this fairly original. Guys, I've got it all back together. It's actually been a little more involved than just putting it back together since I left you. While I was putting it all back together, I accidentally snagged this ribbon cable and tore. And you can see where it's tore. Maybe you can see. I'll try to set it down where you can see that it's tore right here. Anyway, got it back together and hooked it up. And all of a sudden, all I had was video up here on this screen. And the HDMI didn't work. Made no sense whatsoever because it was just working. And then I started looking everywhere. I tried to figure out if one of my solder bridges was bad or something like that. And with this tucked up under the chip, I just didn't quite notice that tear in the ribbon cable. So anyway, long story short, I'm glad they sent me an extra one of these. And you need to be real careful because when these things are pretty strong. However, when you get them sandwiched in between and pull up against this straight edge on the side of this socket, it will tear fairly easily, a lot more easily than you would think. And as you know, when you're putting it all back together, you've got the keyboard cable and everything else pulling across in there, so you got to make sure you don't snag anything. Anyway, long story short, I got out an old socket of mine and took the extra ribbon cable and resoldered the ribbon cable and put it back on, and everything's just fine. Except now I don't have a spare, and I better not break that one. I did put some Kapton tape on it just to keep a little bit of strength to it. It'd be nicer maybe if there was a little of a strain relief on this side right here. SPL, I'll get on Discord and let y'all know that, but it's a great product. But I think that is a weak point that needs to be strengthened. Anyway, they've of course got a stiffener where it hooks in. I think it needs a stiffener on this side. All right. So now if I turn the 64 on and turn this monitor on, give it a second to sync. The monitor turning on, in other words. And there's the signal. Okay, so obviously if you had an HDMI monitor instead of a TV, it would probably be a little bit faster. This is a really cheap RCA prison TV, is the reason it's all clear. Anyway, it's a little on the slow side getting set up. I doubt its refresh rate's very good either. It's not going to be the normal one that I use, but it's kind of a small monitor, so it's easy to deal with. on the test bench here. So, but HDMI and analog or S-video at the same time. HDMI, S-video. So obviously this would be a pretty good setup for someone that was doing YouTube videos like I do. However, I don't use a lot of technology. I do have some converters and HDMI capture cards and everything else, but I just find it's just my style, I guess, to do it the easy way. Okay, guys, what you can see here is basically the finished setup. I've got it here in my at my games desk, which I have a traditional CRT over here. But what I have here is just an old Vizio TV. Obviously, you can see that from the setup here, just have the HDMI connected and a back bit here happen to be playing or showing Planet X2's intro screen. You can see the quality of the video is very good. I'll turn up the audio a little bit so you can hear it. Audio is pretty good as well. Now, of course, that audio is coming through the HDMI. I don't have any external speakers or anything. It's going directly into this Vizio TV and playing on the Vizio TV's sorry speakers. But it's good for games. You know, it doesn't have to have a lot of fidelity in playing most games. Anyway, all in all, I would say that you know, this is a success. Very happy with this, and it will become a part of this gaming desk permanently. So, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for taking a look at my install here. Again, a little different than what I normally do, but thought I would record it. So, see y'all the next time.